So you want to learn about one of the greatest graft stalks of all time? One of the thickest, most resilient San Pedros that there was, that was also famous for its Arizona roots? Stick around, people. We're about to get into the Tucson Fat. Let's go. Hello, wonderful people. Welcome back to another deep dive on a San Pedro clone. This one's got a little bit of controversy with it as well. Let's see how fat that is. Look at him next to a bridge. Look at that. This is the Tucson Fat, aka, or maybe not aka, El Chapo. And where does the clone El Chapo fit into the lineage with this guy? So join us as we set him down real quick and we look at some of our big, nice mother stands of it. I have both Tucson Fat and El Chapos. We're going to compare the two, go over my opinions on them, and we're going to deep dive the history on how Plants of Southwest and the owner Gene is the one that made this clone available to everybody, and how it's kind of a Arizona tradition to go down to that nursery and get one of these clones from him yourself. That's what we're looking at right here. This guy was probably like 2 little stumps and then 8 inches when I bought it from him. And I bought a couple of them from him, and I also bought some official El Chapo clones way back in the day, which is what this guy is. El Chapo. So yeah, let's go through the history and let's go through some identification. Is this guy a Scopulicola? Is this guy a Pacanoy? Or is it a hybrid? And why is it so hard for everybody to decide and agree on one thing? The awesome world of San Pedro genetics. Let's go, guys. Alrighty, here's another one I got from Plants of Southwest. And I can always tell because it's like this little arm and then cut instantly. The rest of this, all I grew. Huge. But we're gonna go over some cactus IDing, specifically aerials. Aerials, the best. So that's what these little white things are, where the spines are coming out of them. You can see all cactus have them. Here's a prickly pear. Those are the aerials. So the size of these specifically is how you can ID some of these. I want you to pay attention to how these ones are bigger. Let's see if I can get it side by side. So you can see how they're bigger and they have more spines coming out of them. Scopulicola have extremely small aerials. Let's see, do I have one over here? No. Here's one that's got slightly big ones for a scope. So you can see this is pretty similar to Scopulicola aerials and spine length. The one to your left is the Desert Botanical scope that I bought from the Desert Botanical, and it is properly ID'd as a scope. And I have gotten that guy to flower, which is pretty cool. Another little interesting tad bit about scopes and why everybody kind of debates and wants to know what they are is because they're classified currently as extinct in the wild, and they're only in cultivated gardens like this. So a lot of people just wonder, you know, is this a scope or is this a straight Pacanoy? Now you can tell that it's not a Pacanoy, or I mean you could tell that it's not any of the other two clones or species. So if I put him side by side, you can see the size difference of these aerials. The guy next to him is a Huascuensis. I probably butchered that name because I'm really not the best with foreign names, but you can just tell the difference in that, and then you can tell the difference in spines. So Scopulicola are renowned for not having spines like that. Like you can just straight bare fist this. You can just grab it and it does not hurt. I could not say the same for this guy. He would hurt. So he's kind of closer to Scope and Pacanoy than Burgess, especially because Burgess loved to have big spines, Huascuensis, or the Peruvian torch. And those are the kind of 5 major ones you'll see people talking about as the umbrella term San Pedro. Those are the 5 main species. So this dude kind of gets blue too, and Scope I don't think get too blue, which makes people kind of think that it's a hybrid and not a pure Scope. So let's take him on over to a pure Pacanoy, one that's famous, the Ogun Pacanoy. So you can see instantly how much fatter it is. That's why they're calling them Tucson Fats. And El Chapo looks so similar to Tucson Fat that there's a heavy debate if they're the same clone. So both of them are extremely fat, robust, and I have tasted, little taste test, they're spicy. El Chapo, at least specifically, is. But as you can see, it's still very similar to a Pacanoy. So it's really hard to tell if it, maybe everybody seems to agree it's a Scope, at least half, like it's a hybrid, at least with one of the parents as a Scope. But it's hard to really fully declare that maybe it doesn't have some Pacanoy or something in it that's just not showing out quite as much. Another great thing to notice about the Pacs and the Scopes is Scopes are usually blockier. They have fatter ribs like that. You can see when he's thickening out, it's really not like it's blocky like that. The Scopes are renowned for that. And they also usually have like 6 ribs down to 4. They usually don't get, I haven't seen many get 7 ribs. You usually have to. Here's another great example. He's a little dehydrated. But this is a hybrid Scope. And you can see, because of the hybridization, he has a lot more ribs than a standard Scope. So that's another thing to look for. This guy is commonly Scope ribbed, meaning it does not get up to 7. I've seen it go down to 4 rarely, but it usually stays at 5 to 6 ribs. Pacanoys can get a little more ribs too. So let's talk about hybrids and how the phenotypes can show out, and how it can get a little complicated at classifying something if you don't know the exact lineage of what bred it. Whew, the Arizona sun is not being kind on the seedlings right now. Got some stress for sure. I just got to deal with it. So take a look at this, right? This is a good example of a hybrid. Dr. G. Scop times Burgess SS02. Now, if you look at the actual, and this is a lot of these seedlings, a couple of them actually did look like Burgesses, but none of them have Burgess thorns at all. So the hybrid does not always present itself like a 50-50 mashup of the parents. It could just look like the dad, like straight up like a clone of the dad, just looks like it. I'm not saying it is a clone, it just looks like it. And some of them could just straight up look like the mom. And then some of them could be a combination of both. So it's very hard to tell, you know, it could have been a Scope that was bred to a Pacanoy, and it just looks like the Scope parent. And it doesn't really have the Pacanoy traits. I've also noticed that Scope is very predominant when you cross them. Here's a pure Burgess seedling to show you the difference. Not even remotely does it look like the Burgess really came out. Now where I start to see Burgess when I cross it with Scope is the rib size. It starts to get much thinner and more ribs usually. Here we are with another hybrid, or at least suspected hybrid. This is Lumberjack, and you could tell it really gets these like kind of Burgess thorns. The shape of the thorns though is kind of Burgess-like, but it almost has too many. I don't know how to describe it. And then it's hard to tell, but this main stock here has about 8 ribs. which is definitely a little uncommon for Jesse. So it can show in all sorts of different ways. So it's going to be impossible to declare it for sure a scope or for sure a pachynoid. But it is important to maintain that we look at mature growth and not immature growth. See, this is immature growth. This is mature growth. You could tell again the aerial size. This is a Peruvian, very blue. And then here's some mature growth of the Tucson Fat. Now let's go on over to my buddy, because I know somebody that has both of these clones, and they're both mature and big, vigorous, in-ground cactus. And let's compare the two and see, just how majestic and beautiful this clone really is once it's going. Because like I showed you with that arm I'm carrying around, it gets fat. Let's go cut to that. And I just want to thank everybody for supporting all these videos and keeping us going. These are all the clones that are going out to you fine people, and I am incredibly honored to be delivering these beautiful cuts to you guys. Can't wait to see some updates. Shout out to some of you guys in the comments. I know some of these are going out to you, so comment if you see your cactus. And yeah, I'm very happy, but I'm sorry at the same time that I missed last week's upload. We're trying to keep it weekly, but we've been very busy as I've been having to cut all these, and these are all taking their place. And at the same time, we have some Shogun graphs that are drying, and those should be hitting the website soon as well. So thank you guys if you're keeping your eyes out for a Shogun. It's coming soon. We've got these little SSO2s, a Dayman. And just look at how beautiful this lumberjack is. Sonoranspores.com if you guys want some beautiful cuttings like this at your front door. Thank you, everybody. Back to the clone history. All right, little voiceover slideshow. Shout out to the homie for sending this video of his mother's stands. Took some notes of what he wanted us to say, and I'll add some more of my own. So this one here, this is El Chapo. He sourced it at the Desert Botanical Gardens in 2019. It was labeled San Pedro El Chapo, not Scopulicola. And this is from the Desert Botanical Gardens. They know what they're doing. His arm recently broke at 10 feet in the storm, and he says that it does vary 5 to 7 ribs. It does love the Phoenix heat, or does well, at least, in the Phoenix heat. So this post is regard to Tucson Fat and El Chapo, and if they're different. Ken Kunzler of New Mexico Cactus purchased seeds labeled FR991. I want you to remember that name. It's very important. And he sowed somewhere around 8 of those seedlings over in Spain. His custom was to sell off the seedlings until he had a last couple to keep as future graft stocks. He sold 2 of them over to our friend Gene, who's somewhat of a botanical hero over in Tucson. And he planted both of those, and they grew and grew and grew, and they were able to survive the climate. It's worth noting that the parent FR991 I mentioned earlier is not a pure Scopulicola. Then he goes on to say, there are at least 2 known siblings from that seed lot in current horticultural propagation, but they are, to his knowledge, still unnamed. So he's implying that that could be Tucson Fat and the El Chapo. Now what we're looking at here is Tucson Fat. This is, let me know if you see any differences, but this is basically a mother plant coming up at about 8 feet tall. That is a Tucson Fat, sourced directly from plants of Southwest. When talking about Tucson Fats, David Waters says that he was the first one to sell Emerson the clone that could be traced back to its California origins, the FR991 clone. And then he went on to work with Gene at Plants of Southwest, where he told Gene that his graft stock was becoming famous on an online market and that the Tucson Fats were taking off. Now, Gene has 3 mother stands on the property, so after that, he began selling them and distributing it, and the legendary clone Tucson Fat became to be. All right, now that was a lot to take in, so let's do a summary while we got this beautiful B-roll of the Arizona cactus ritual. This is how Arizonians everywhere do this. Just take my word for it. This isn't just me. But the summary of this is 8 seeds were sown for graft stock, and they were labeled FR991 after the parent plant. 2 seeds of this batch were sold to Gene. Those 2 seeds did very well in the harsh Sonoran sun, and it was noticed as a very thick, vigorous San Pedro. They were grown originally for graft stocks, which is how they became famous as some of the best graft stocks in the world. He then traded Cactus with 2 people in California. The parent of FR991 is a suspected hybrid by Pina de Rosas. Gene let David Waters give the name Tucson Fat, and Gene currently has 3 stands on his property. Now, this is where it gets a little confusing and muddied because it's still unknown where the name El Chapo came from and why it's only popping up in local nurseries. For those of you not in Arizona, the Tucson Fats only really pop up here in the plants of Southwest and a couple local nurseries. But the clone Tucson Fat has a very similar story, and it also only pops up in local nurseries like Summer Winds and stuff like that, which is actually how I got acquainted with El Chapo as a clone. Alright, a little activity to round off the video for you guys. Let me know which one you think this is. Is this Tucson Fat? Or is this El Chapo? I want to do this exercise just to show how hard it is to really tell the difference. I'm not going to tell you guys which one. Leave it in the comments, and I'll reveal later if you were right or if you were wrong. But no worries if you get it wrong, because this guy looks very, very similar. It's just the seedling rumors that kind of keep it a little too hard, I think, to make sure for sure that they're the same. But in my opinion, I think they're the same. Let's look at him next to a Hoscoensis. A little different, huh? Little. This guy's pretty fat too. I want to thank everybody for sticking with us. Here's a big old Pacanoy. Mature growth. Mature Pacanoy growth. Scopulicola growth. Let me know if you learned anything on this video. I've been seeing a lot of comments from people saying, hey, we got into you guys and we found your company back when COVID was happening, and we got into you for the mushroom side of things. And hey, I love to see those comments. Thank you all for leaving comments like that. Hopefully we should have some of that kind of content coming out soon, but YouTube's a little more friendly on the cactus content, you know? So we try to keep it a lot more cactus over here, even though I'm sure most of you know us for our mushrooms and our mushroom genetics. SonoranSpores.com if you guys are curious. Much love to you all, and take care. Thank you for joining us on this epic tour as we went through the history of the Tucson Fat. Much love.